The morning sickness hit hardest between the smell of espresso and bacon grease. Sofia Romano pressed her palm against the cool stainless steel of the server station, breathing through her nose like the doctor had taught her, counting backwards from 10 in Italian the way her grandmother used to when Sofia was small and scared of thunderstorms. 10, 9, 8. The nausea passed, leaving behind that metallic taste and the bone-deep exhaustion that had become her constant companion these past 14 weeks. 14 weeks of hiding saltines in her apron pocket. 14 weeks of blaming her frequent bathroom trips on a fictional bladder infection. 14 weeks of lying to everyone at Carmelo's about why she looked pale and moved carefully, and sometimes had to step outside for air. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Everyone except Lucia, the dishwasher who'd had 4 kids and recognized the signs immediately. Lucia, who brought her ginger tea without being asked and covered when Sofia needed an extra minute to compose herself. You okay, Piccola? Lucia appeared now with that tea, pressing the warm mug into Sofia's hands with a knowing look that said everything her words didn't. Fine. Just tired. Sofia wrapped her fingers around the ceramic, let the heat ground her. Big party tonight. 12 top at 7. You should tell him. Lucia kept her voice low, mindful of the kitchen chaos around them. Mr. Romano, he'd want to know. Sofia's hand moved instinctively to her still flat stomach, a gesture she'd been training herself not to make in public. I will. Soon. He's been dealing with the Santoro situation. I don't want to distract him with this until what? Until you're showing? Until someone here figures it out and word gets back to him from strangers instead of his wife? The weight of that truth settled heavy in Sofia's chest. Lucia was right. She'd been married to Dante Romano for 8 months. 8 months of learning what it meant to love a man who controlled half of Chicago's South Side, who commanded respect with a glance and fear with a word. 8 months of navigating the careful balance between being his wife and maintaining the independence that had made him fall for her in the first place. She'd met him here, actually. At Carmelo's Italian kitchen, where she'd been waitressing for 3 years while finishing her business degree at DePaul. He'd come in alone on a Tuesday night, taken a corner booth, and ordered the osso buco without looking at the menu. She'd noticed him immediately impossible not to, with those dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything, the expensive suit that whispered money, the way other diners unconsciously leaned away when he passed. But it was the way he'd said please when asking for water, the generous tip left on a modest bill, the fact that he'd stacked his dishes to make her job easier, small courtesies that suggested layers beneath the obvious danger. He'd returned every Tuesday for 6 weeks before finally asking her name. 3 months later, she'd learned exactly who Dante Romano was. Not just a businessman with import-export interests, but the head of the Romano family, the man who'd inherited his father's empire at 28 and spent the last 5 years consolidating power through strategy rather than violence. When possible, brutality when necessary. She should have run. Every rational cell in her body had screamed to run. Instead, she'd looked at the man who brought her mother flowers, who'd memorized her class schedule so he'd know when she was too busy to call, who'd held her when she cried about her student loans and then quietly paid them off without asking permission, a gesture that had resulted in their first real fight about autonomy and charity and the difference between love and control. I don't want to be kept, she'd told him, furious and grateful and terrified all at once. I'm not some doll you put on a shelf. I know, he'd replied, those dark eyes seeing straight through her. That's why I'm in love with you. They'd married 6 weeks later in a small ceremony that probably violated a dozen traditions and definitely horrified his consigliere, who'd spent an hour lecturing Dante about security risks and appropriate vetting processes for potential wives. Sofia had insisted on keeping her job. Had fought for it, actually, in their second real argument as a married couple. You don't need to work, Dante had said, careful and measured in that way that meant he was trying not to be controlling while desperately wanting to control the situation. I can provide. I know you can provide. But I need this. Need to be Sofia Castellano at work. She'd kept her maiden name professionally, not Sofia Romano. Need to have something that's mine, that I built myself. He'd studied her for a long moment, that intense gaze that made her feel simultaneously naked and seen. Finally, he'd nodded. Okay, but you take security, non-negotiable. She'd accepted the compromise. Marco, one of Dante's men, had gotten a job as a line cook. He was actually terrible at cooking, but excellent at staying close enough to intervene if needed, while maintaining enough distance that Sofia could pretend at normalcy. Except now there was a baby. Now the equation had changed. Now she had 13 more hours until she could tell her husband that in 7 months he was going to be a father, and she had no idea if he'd be thrilled or terrified or angry that she'd waited this long. Table 4 needs their check. Marcus, the floor manager, barked from across the kitchen, and 5 is ready to order. Move it, Castellano. We're not paying you to daydream. Sofia swallowed the response that wanted to claw its way up her throat. Marcus DeLuca had been a problem since the day he'd have been promoted 3 months ago, handsy with the female staff, cruel to the kitchen workers, and currently skimming from the register in ways he clearly thought were subtle, but Sofia's business degree had spotted within the first week. She'd been documenting it, keeping careful records the way her accounting professor had taught her, building a case to take to the owner. She just needed a few more pieces of evidence, a few more transactions that would make the pattern undeniable. On it, she said instead, pasting on the smile that had gotten her through 3 years of customer service, despite exhaustion and morning sickness, and the particular anxiety of being secretly pregnant with a Mafia boss's baby while pretending to be nothing. More than a struggling grad student. The dinner rush hit like a wave at 6:30. Sofia moved through her section on autopilot, her body remembering the choreography even as her mind drifted to the doctor's appointment that morning. The ultrasound image, tucked into her purse, grainy and miraculous. The heartbeat she'd heard for the first time, fast and strong and real. Your baby is healthy, the doctor had said. Everything looks perfect. But you need to start taking it easier. The stress hormones. Excuse me, miss? A woman at table 7 held up an empty wine glass. Could we get a refill? Sofia delivered wine, cleared plates, smiled until her face hurt. Around her, Carmelo's thrummed with the particular energy of a Saturday night conversations, layering over jazz from hidden speakers, the clink of silverware against porcelain, the rich smell of garlic and tomato sauce and bread baking in the kitchen's ancient oven. She was refilling water glasses at table 9 when she felt it, that prickle of awareness that came from being watched. She turned to find Marcus staring at her from across the dining room, his expression calculating in a way that made her stomach clench. He'd been watching her more closely lately, noticing her, frequent bathroom trips, her slower movements, the way she'd started declining family meal because the smell of the staff pasta made her gag. He can't know, she told herself, but the anxiety settled heavy anyway. Nobody knows except Lucia and the doctor and Sofia. Marcus appeared at her elbow, too close, his cologne overwhelming. My office, now. Her heart kicked against her ribs. I'm in the middle of a section. Can it wait until... now? The walk to his office felt like miles instead of yards. Sofia's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. He'd figured out about the pregnancy. He'd discovered her documentation of his theft. He'd learned who she was married to and decided to use it as leverage. The office was barely larger than a closet, crammed with filing cabinets and a desk covered in invoices. Marcus closed the door behind them, and Sofia's throat went tight. I've been noticing things, Marcus said, leaning against the desk with his arms crossed. You've been distracted lately, slow, making mistakes. I haven't made any mistakes. Sofia kept her voice level, professional, even as her pulse hammered. My tables are satisfied. My orders are accurate. You took a 45-minute break on Thursday. I was sick. Lucia covered for me. And yesterday you were late for your shift. 5 minutes. There was traffic. And just now, I watched you nearly drop a tray of wine glasses. He pushed off the desk, moved closer. So I'm asking myself, what's going on with Sofia Castellano? What's making our previously reliable waitress suddenly so... fragile? The way he said fragile made it sound like an accusation. Like weakness deserving punishment. Nothing's going on. I've just been tired. School and work, it's a lot, but I'm handling it. Are you? He was close enough now that she could see the burst blood vessels in his eyes, smell the whiskey underneath the cologne. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're becoming a liability. Marcus, I don't know what you think. I think you're pregnant. The words hit like a slap. Sofia's breath caught, her hand moving instinctively to her stomach before she could stop herself. That tiny, betraying gesture that confirmed everything. Marcus's smile was cold, triumphant. I knew it. Jesus, Castellano. Knocked up by which one? That business major you were dating? Or did you spread it around enough that you're not sure? Rage flooded through her, hot and clarifying. How dare you? How dare I? His voice climbed. You're working in my restaurant, serving my customers, while pregnant and lying about it. That's a liability. That's grounds for termination. You can't fire me for being pregnant. That's illegal. I can fire you for performance issues. For the mistakes I've been documenting. He pulled a folder from his desk, waved it like evidence. 3 weeks of problems, all recorded. All witnessed. Sofia's business training kicked in, cutting, through the emotion. Let me see that documentation. Excuse me? If you're claiming performance issues, I have a right to see the evidence. That's labor law, so show me. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Then his expression hardened into something uglier, meaner. You don't get to make demands, sweetheart. You're done here. Clean out your locker and I'm not going anywhere. Sofia stood straighter, channeling every ounce of Romano steel she'd absorbed through 8 months of marriage. You're fabricating performance issues to cover illegal termination. I know it. You know it. And if you push this, I'll file a complaint with the EEOC so fast your head will spin. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact. His hand shot out, gripped her upper arm. Hard enough to bruise, hard enough to make her gasp. Listen to me very carefully, you little. The door to his office slammed open. Marco stood in the doorway, his line cook's apron still on, but everything about his posture screaming violence barely contained. Get your fucking hands off her. Marcus released Sofia's arm immediately, but the damage was done. She could feel the hot throb where his fingers had dug in, could see the calculation in his eyes as he looked between her and Marco, adding up numbers that would equal disaster. This is a private conversation. Marcus tried for authority, but his voice shook slightly. You need to leave. No. Marco stepped fully into the room, and despite being the same height as Marcus, he suddenly seemed to take up twice the space. What I need is for you to explain why you're putting your hands on a woman. I barely touched her. She's being dramatic. I saw what you did. Marco's voice was flat, emotionless in the way that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. And you're going to regret it. Sofia's brain caught up with what was happening. Marco calling in what he'd witnessed. Dante learning not just about the pregnancy, but about Marcus's assault in the same breath. The inevitable, terrible response. Marco, it's fine. I'm fine. It's not fine, Mrs. Romano. The name dropped into the small office like a grenade with the pin pulled. Marcus went white. Actually white. All the blood draining from his face as the pieces clicked into place. Sofia Castellano. Sofia Romano. The wife he'd just assaulted, just threatened, just called a liability. The wife of the man who controlled every restaurant, every business, every breath taken on the South Side. Oh God, Marcus breathed. Oh my God, I didn't know. That shouldn't matter. Sofia found her voice despite the adrenaline flooding her system. You shouldn't assault anyone, regardless of who they're married to. But Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at the doorway where more of Dante's men were appearing, materializing from positions throughout the restaurant she hadn't known they occupied. And behind them, parting them, like a wave, came Dante Romano himself. He'd come straight from a meeting, still in his charcoal suit, the late evening sun catching on his dark hair. To anyone watching, he looked calm, composed. Just a man arriving at a restaurant where his wife happened to work, but Sofia knew him. Knew the rage and the absolute stillness of his expression, the violence in the careful way he moved through the door, the promise of retribution in the dark eyes that swept the small office, cataloging everything. His gaze found hers first. Held it. In that moment of connection, she saw him do the math, saw him notice her pale face, her protective hand on her stomach, the red marks forming on her arm where Marcus had grabbed her. Saw the exact second he understood she was pregnant. Something shifted in his expression, not softening exactly but transforming, the cold rage becoming something more primal, more absolute. Then he looked at Marcus, and Sofia watched her boss realize he was already dead. Not, metaphorically. Actually dead, just waiting for his body to catch up with the reality of his situation. Dante, she started. Amore mio. His voice was gentle when he spoke to her, a stark contrast to the violence she could feel vibrating beneath his control. Are you hurt? I'm okay. We're okay. She needed him to hear the plural, to understand. But we need to talk. Privately. We will. He moved to her side, his hand finding the small of her back, that familiar gesture of possession and protection that usually made her feel safe but right now just made her aware of how badly this was about to escalate. Marco, take my wife to the car. Make sure she's comfortable. Dante, please. Don't do anything to Soro. He cupped her face with one hand, thumb brushing her cheekbone. You're carrying our child. This man put his hands on you in anger. Did you think I would do nothing? I think there are ways to handle this that don't involve Mrs. Romano. Marcus found his voice, high and desperate. Please. I didn't know. If I'd known who you were, I never would have. That's the problem, Dante said, still not looking at him. You wouldn't have done it if you'd known she was mine. But you had no issue assaulting a woman you thought was powerless. Now he turned, and Marcus actually took a step back. That tells me everything about your character. I'll resign. Right now. I'll leave Chicago. You'll do exactly what I tell you to do. Dante's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. And right now, I'm telling you to get on your knees and apologize to my wife for putting your hands on her. The office went silent. Even the ambient noise from the restaurant seemed to fade, like the building itself was holding its breath. Marcus dropped to his knees. Sofia, his voice cracked. Mrs. Romano, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it was a mistake. A terrible mistake. Stop. Sofia couldn't watch this. Couldn't be the reason for this man's terror, regardless of what he'd done. Dante, this is enough. Let him go. Let him quit and leave and… No. He said it simply. Finally. You don't get to protect the man who hurt you, Amor. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? You hurt him? You kill him? And our baby grows up with a father who murdered someone over a shove? The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. This was the conversation they'd been avoiding since the day she'd said yes to marrying him. The conversation about what kind of man he was, what kind of father he'd be, where the lines were drawn between protection and vengeance. Dante's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he just looked at her, and she could see him warring with himself, the man he'd been raised to be versus the man she needed him to become. Okay, he said finally. Okay, but he's done in this city, done in this industry. And if I ever hear he's put his hands on another woman, the mercy you're asking for now disappears. Are we clear? Marcus nodded frantically, still on his knees. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. Romano. Thank you. Get out of my sight, Dante said. Now. Marcus scrambled up and ran. Literally ran from the office, leaving his personal effects, his dignity, everything behind in his desperation to escape. The office emptied slowly, Dante's men melting back into whatever positions they'd held before, the restaurant returning to its normal rhythm as if nothing had happened. As if a man's entire life hadn't just been dismantled in the space of 5 minutes. Finally, it was just the two of them. Sofia and Dante, standing in a closet-sized office that smelled like fear and cologne, both of them trying to process the last 10 minutes. You're pregnant, Dante said quietly. 14 weeks. And you didn't tell me. I was going to. Tonight, actually. I had a whole plan. She laughed, sharp and slightly hysterical. Dinner at home? Your favorite meal? The ultrasound picture. Presented after dessert. Very romantic and not at all like this. He pulled her into his arms, careful and gentle and shaking slightly. Are you really okay? Did he hurt you? Hurt the baby? We're fine. I promise. Just shaken up. She burrowed into his chest, breathing in his familiar scent, expensive cologne, and the faint cigarette smoke he thought she didn't notice. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was scared. Of me? Of this? Of everything changing? Of you treating me like glass instead of a partner. He pulled back enough to look at her, his hands framing her face. Sofia, amor mio, you're carrying my child. Nothing will ever be the same. And yes, I'm going to be more protective, but that doesn't mean I don't see you as my equal. It means I see you as the mother of my baby, the woman I love, the most important person in my entire world. Tears she'd been fighting all day finally spilled over. I love you. And I'm terrified. And I don't know how to do this, how to be. Pregnant and your wife and still myself. We'll figure it out. He pressed his forehead to hers. Together. But right now, I'm taking you home. You're done working today, done working at all until we talk about what that looks like moving forward. Dante. Non-negotiable. His voice was firm but not harsh. You can fight me on this tomorrow when you're not pale and exhausted and recovering from being assaulted. But tonight, you let me take care of you. Please. Sofia wanted to argue. Wanted to defend her autonomy and independence and all the things they'd fought about before. But exhaustion was pulling at her bones, and the baby was making her emotional. And more than anything, she wanted to go home with her husband and figure out how to build a future from this impossible present. Okay, she whispered. Take me home. The drive to their home in Lincoln Park passed in fragments of silence punctuated by Dante's quiet phone calls conducted entirely in Italian, his free hand never leaving hers. Sofia watched the city blur past tinted windows, the Saturday evening crowds looking carefree and uncomplicated in ways she could barely remember feeling. See, Dante said into his phone, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Voglio un rapporto completo entro domattina. I want a full report by tomorrow morning. He was pulling Marcus DeLuca's entire life apart. Sofia knew it without asking. By sunrise, Dante would know every debt, every secret, every vulnerable point in Marcus's existence. Not to exploit them, he'd given his word, but to ensure compliance. To make certain Marcus understood the mercy he'd been granted and the consequences of wasting it. You're thinking too loud, Dante said after ending the call. His accent thicker than usual, the way it got when he was stressed or angry or trying very hard to be gentle when his instincts screamed for violence. I'm thinking about what would have happened if I'd told you about the pregnancy this morning like I planned. Before any of this. Then Marcus would have never gotten the chance to put his hands on you because you wouldn't have been at work. His voice was matter of fact. No apology in it. Which would have been better for everyone involved, especially him. So you're saying this is my fault? No, amore. I'm saying that the world is dangerous, and it's more dangerous for you now, and I need you to understand that your safety isn't just about you anymore. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. That baby you're carrying is half me, which means there are people who would hurt you to hurt me. The casual way he said it, like discussing weather instead of potential kidnapping or murder, sent ice through her veins. You never told me that. In 8 months of marriage, you never said people might use me as leverage. Because I made sure they couldn't. Because you had protection you didn't know about, security measures you never saw. He glanced at her, dark, eyes unreadable in the passing streetlights. Why do you think Marco was conveniently working in that kitchen? Or that Maria the hostess is actually former military? Or that the coffee shop you study at has 3 of my people positioned there during your usual hours? Sofia's breath caught. You've had me under surveillance this whole time? I've had you protected this whole time. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you've been monitoring my every move without telling me, making decisions about my safety without my input, treating me like my wife. He interrupted, his voice harder now. Like the woman I love who insisted on maintaining independence in a world that would happily use that independence to hurt her. You wanted to keep working, keep your apartment, keep your maiden name professionally. I gave you all of that, but I'm not a fool, Sofia. I wasn't going to let you be vulnerable just to respect some abstract concept of autonomy. They pulled up to the house, a restored Victorian in Lincoln Park, that had cost more than Sofia would make in 10 lifetimes of waitressing. The gate opened automatically, responding to sensors Dante had installed, along with enough security equipment to protect a small nation. He came around to her door before she could open it herself, offered his hand to help her out. She took it despite her anger, despite the churning confusion of loving someone whose protection felt simultaneously like safety and suffocation. Inside, the house smelled like the lemon cleaner Rosa used, the housekeeper, who came 3 times a week and pretended not to notice when Sofia rearranged furniture or added personal touches that softened the masculine space Dante had occupied alone for years before meeting her. Sit, Dante said, guiding her to the leather sofa in the living room. I'll make tea. Since when do you make tea? Since my pregnant wife looks like she's about to pass out. He was, already moving toward the kitchen, loosening his tie as he went. And before you argue, remember that you promised to let me take care of you tonight. Sofia sank into the sofa, her body finally acknowledging the exhaustion she'd been fighting all day. The adrenaline from the confrontation with Marcus was wearing off, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness that made her eyes sting. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through the missed messages. 3 from Lucia asking if she was okay. 1 from the restaurant owner, Mr. Carmelo himself, saying Marcus had been terminated and asking Sofia to call when she felt up to it. And 1 from her best friend Angela, blissfully unaware of the evening's drama, asking if Sofia wanted to grab brunch tomorrow. Normal life, happening in parallel to the chaos. Sofia wasn't sure which version felt more real anymore. Dante returned with tea, actual tea, perfectly steeped, with the honey she preferred, and settled beside her, close enough that their thighs touched. He'd shed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing the forearms she'd traced countless times, mapping the scars he'd collected before they met, and refused to explain in detail. "Drink," he said, and she did, letting the warmth settle her stomach. They sat in silence for several minutes. Sofia drinking her tea, Dante just watching her with that intensity that had attracted her from the beginning, the sense that when Dante Romano looked at you, you were the only person in his universe. "I saw the ultrasound picture," he said finally. "Marco gave it to me before we left the restaurant. It was in your purse, and he thought I should have it." Sofia set down her tea. And I've been sitting here trying to figure out what to say. How to tell you that I'm terrified and thrilled and completely unprepared to be someone's father. His hand found her stomach, spread across the still flat surface with reverence. "My father was a hard man, a cruel man, in many ways. He taught me the business, taught me how to command respect and maintain power, but he never taught me how to be gentle. How to love without conditions. You love me without conditions. Do I?" He met her eyes. "Or do I just love you enough to try? Because tonight, when I saw that bruise forming on your arm, when I understood you were pregnant, and some figlio di puttana had put his hands on you," his jaw clenched. "I wanted to kill him, Sofia. Not rough him up, not threaten him. Actually kill him. And the only thing that stopped me was you asking me not to. That's called growth," Sofia said softly. "That's called choosing to be better than your instincts. But what happens next time? What happens when it's not some restaurant manager but someone who actually means you harm? Someone from a rival family who figures out that the fastest way to destroy me is through you?" His voice cracked slightly. "I can't lose you. And I can't raise this baby alone, wondering every day if I'm turning into my father." Sofia set her tea aside and turned to face him fully, taking both his hands in hers. "Listen to me, Dante Romano. You are not your father. The fact that you're sitting here worried about becoming him proves that. Your father wouldn't have hesitated tonight, wouldn't have listened when I asked for mercy, wouldn't be scared of failing someone he hasn't even met yet." "How do you know?" "Because I know you. I've watched you negotiate peace when violence would have been easier. I've seen you help Rosa's grandson get into college, paying his tuition anonymously. I've heard you on the phone with your sister, patient and kind even when she's being difficult." Sofia pressed his hand more firmly against her stomach. "This baby is lucky to have you as a father. And I'm lucky to have you as a husband. Even when you're overprotective and controlling and making decisions about my safety without consulting me." That earned a small smile. "I really fucked that up, didn't I? The security. Completely. We're going to have a very long conversation about boundaries and communication, and the difference between protection and surveillance." She leaned her forehead against his. "But right now, I'm too tired to fight. Right now, I just want to lie down with my husband and process the fact that we're having a baby." He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious that might break. When they pulled apart, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "A baby," he breathed. "We're having a baby. Due in late June. A summer baby." Sofia smiled despite everything. "I found out 2 weeks ago. The morning sickness started around week 6, but I thought it was just stress from finals. Then I missed my period and took 3 tests because I couldn't believe it. Why didn't you tell me right away?" "Because you were dealing with the Santoro territory dispute, and I didn't want to distract you with this when you needed to focus." She touched his face, felt the slight stubble that appeared every evening no matter how closely he shaved in the morning. "And because I was scared. We'd never talked about kids, never discussed if this was something you even wanted. I want everything with you," Dante said fiercely. "Every complicated, terrifying, beautiful thing." He stood, pulling her up with him. "But right now, you need rest. Actual rest. Not the half sleep you've been getting while working double shifts and taking a full course load. He led her upstairs to their bedroom, a space they'd negotiated together. Sofia softening his minimalist aesthetic with throws and plants and photographs. The bed was massive, custom-made to accommodate Dante's height, covered in the Egyptian cotton sheets he preferred, and the excessive number of pillows she required. "I'm not an invalid," Sofia protested as he helped her out of her work clothes with careful hands. "I can undress myself." "I know. Let me do this anyway." He pulled one of his t-shirts over her, had the soft gray one she'd stolen weeks ago, and guided her to the bed. "Sleep, Amor. I'll be right here." But sleep felt impossible, with her mind racing through everything that had happened, everything that would need to happen next. "What about work? I can't just quit without notice. Mr. Carmelo has been good to me, already handled. I spoke with him while you were in the bathroom at the restaurant. You're on paid leave effective immediately, with the option to return part-time after the baby if you choose. He's also implementing new management protocols and harassment training for all staff." Sofia should have been annoyed that he'd made these arrangements without her input. Instead, she felt mostly relief. "And Marcus is currently on a plane to Seattle. He'll start a new job Monday morning, entry-level, nothing management at a restaurant owned by an associate of mine who will ensure he treats his staff with respect. He'll also be making monthly payments to a women's shelter as part of his continued employment agreement. You set all that up in one car ride? I made some calls while you were getting changed." Dante settled beside her, pulling her against his chest. "This is what I do, Sofia. I solve problems. I protect what's mine. And you and that baby are mine in ways that have nothing to do with possession and everything to do with love." Sofia let herself sink into his warmth, her exhaustion finally winning over her racing thoughts. "We have so much to figure out. Where I'll work, if I'll work, how to balance your world with raising a child, what to tell people, tomorrow," he murmured against her hair. "We'll figure it all out tomorrow. Tonight, just let me hold you." She must have slept, because when she opened her eyes again, pale dawn light was filtering through the curtains, and Dante was gone. Panic spiked through her chest, irrational but immediate, until she heard his voice from the hallway, low and controlled but with an edge. That meant business. "I don't care what arrangements need to be made. Cancel everything for the next week. My wife needs me. And that takes priority over every territorial dispute and business meeting, and favor anyone thinks they're owed." Sofia smiled despite herself, pulling his pillow closer and breathing in his scent. This was who Dante Romano was, a man who would burn down the world for the people he loved, who measured every decision against the metric of keeping his family safe. It should have terrified her. Sometimes it did. But lying there in their bed, carrying their baby, Sofia found she could live with the danger if it meant keeping this love. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Angela. "Girl, you alive? You never responded about brunch. Also, there are rumors circulating about something that happened at Carmelo's last night. Call me." The restaurant drama had already made it through the grapevine. By Monday, everyone would know that Sofia Castellano was, actually, Sofia Romano, that she'd been assaulted by her manager, that her husband had intervened with the full weight of his power. Her carefully maintained separation between her two worlds had collapsed in one evening. Dante appeared in the doorway, 2 mugs in hand, and concern etched across his features. "You're awake. How do you feel?" "Like my life exploded and I'm trying to pick up the pieces." Sofia accepted the herbal tea he offered. He'd already learned she couldn't handle coffee right now. "Angela is texting. People are talking. My cover as just a normal grad student is completely blown. Good. Good? Dante, I wanted to keep that part of my life separate from yours. I wanted to be able to exist in spaces where I wasn't defined by being your wife." He sat on the edge of the bed, his expression serious. "And I understand that impulse. But Sofia, you were working in a restaurant where your manager felt comfortable assaulting you because he thought you were powerless. Where he could skim money and harass staff because there were no consequences. His hand found hers. Now people know who you are, know that you're protected, that touching you means answering to me. That's not a cage, Amor. That's insurance. It's also intimidation. People will treat me differently now. They'll be scared of me, or they'll want favors, or they'll assume I'm just another mob wife who doesn't actually do anything except spend her husband's money. Then prove them wrong." Dante's voice was matter of fact. "You're finishing your business degree in 3 months. You have skills, intelligence, drive. Use them. Build something that's yours. Whether that's consulting or starting your own business or whatever you want. I'll provide capital and connections, but the work will be yours. The success will be yours." It was a compelling vision, Sofia Romano. Not just the wife of a mafia boss, but a force in her own right. Someone who commanded respect not because of her last name, but because of what she'd built. "What about the baby?" she asked. "How do I build a career while being pregnant, while raising a child in your world?" "The same way every working mother does, through support and flexibility, and accepting that you can't do everything alone." He shifted to face her more directly. "Rosa has already volunteered to help with childcare when you need it. My sister Maria is desperate to be involved. And I'll be there, Sofia. Not as some distant father who just provides financially. I want to be present for this. For all of it." Tears pricked her eyes, hormones making her more emotional than usual. "You're going to be a good father." "I'm going to try." He pulled her into his arms, careful of the tea she still held. "And when I fuck it up, because I will, I need you to tell me, to keep me honest. To be my conscience when my instincts lean toward violence instead of patience." They stayed like that for several minutes, just holding each other in the morning, light. Then Sofia's stomach growled, loud enough to make them both laugh. "Breakfast," Dante declared, standing and pulling her up with him. "What does the baby want?" "Waffles, with strawberries and whipped cream. And bacon. Lots of bacon. Your wish is my command, Signora." He kissed her forehead. "But you're eating in bed." "Doctor's orders." "I didn't go to the doctor yet with you. You will tomorrow. I already made an appointment with the best OB/GYN in Chicago, Dr. Sarah Chen. She's handled several delicate situations for families in our circle. Discreet, excellent, and willing to make house calls if necessary." Sofia wanted to argue about him making medical decisions without her, about choosing doctors based on their willingness to accommodate mob families, about all the ways this was exactly the kind of overreach they'd fought about before. But she was hungry and tired, and her husband was offering to make her waffles, and some battles just weren't worth fighting on an empty stomach. "Fine," she said, "but I'm meeting her first before deciding if she's actually my doctor. And if I don't like her, we find someone else. Deal." Dante was already heading toward the door. "Stay in bed. I'll bring breakfast up." After he left, Sofia pulled out her phone and opened her messages. Angela's text glowed at the top of the screen, demanding answers. Below it, 3 missed calls from her father in Boston. They hadn't spoken in 2 years. Not since she'd told him she was marrying Dante, and he'd called her a fool for getting involved with those people. And at the bottom, 1 message from an unknown number that made her blood run cold. "Congratulations on the pregnancy, Mrs. Romano. Some gifts come with strings attached. Watch yourself." Sofia's hands shook as she screenshot the message, her mind immediately racing through possibilities. Someone from a rival family, an enemy of Dante's. Someone who'd been at the restaurant last night and heard Marco use her. Married name. She should tell Dante immediately. Should show him the message and let him handle it with his usual efficiency. But something made her hesitate. Some instinct that said once she showed him this, once he saw that someone had threatened their baby, there would be no restraining his response, no measured negotiation or strategic patience. Just violence, swift and absolute. And their child would learn to live in a world where threats were answered with bloodshed, where safety came at the cost of someone else's destruction. Sofia stared at the message, thumb hovering over the delete button. Dante's footsteps were already audible on the stairs, bringing waffles and orange juice and all the normal domestic comfort she'd never expected to have with a man like him. She had seconds to decide. Show him and accept the consequences, or hide it and handle it herself somehow, or wait and see if this was just one threat in what would be a lifetime of them. The cost of loving someone, powerful in a world built on violence. The bedroom door opened, Dante entering with a tray laden with exactly what she'd requested, his face softening into that rare smile he reserved only for her. "Breakfast is served, Signora," he said, setting the tray across her lap with surprising grace. "I even remembered to cut the strawberries the way you like them." Sofia locked her phone and set it face down on the nightstand, pushing the threatening message from her mind. Tomorrow, she'd figure out what to do about it. Tonight, she'd eat waffles with her husband and pretend their world was normal, even if both of them knew better. The next 48 hours passed in a strange bubble of domesticity. Dante canceled his meetings as promised, and they spent Sunday in bed or on the couch, talking about everything they'd been too busy or too scared to discuss before. Baby name Sofia wanted traditional Italian. Dante leaned toward something that would work in both cultures. Nursery plans the guest room with the best light. Painted sage green maybe, with white furniture and those blackout curtains they'd need for sleep training. Sleep training? Dante had laughed when she mentioned it. Sofia, our baby isn't even born and you're already planning military-style schedules? My business degree requires planning and organization. I'm just applying those skills to parenthood. Our baby is going to hate you. Our baby is going to have structure and routine, which every parenting book says is essential for development. He'd kissed her then, effectively ending the argument, and pulled her against him on the couch while they watched cooking shows neither of them cared about. It felt impossibly normal, impossibly perfect. And the threatening text message burned in Sofia's mind like acid, corroding the peace she was trying to maintain. She kept checking her phone, waiting for another message, another threat. But there was nothing. Radio. Silence from the unknown number, which somehow felt worse than continued harassment, like waiting for a bomb to go off without knowing when or where. Monday morning brought Dr. Chen's appointment. Dante drove them himself instead of using his usual driver, and Sofia noticed the two cars that followed at a distance security she was learning to identify. Men whose job was keeping her safe from threats she'd been naive enough not to anticipate. The medical building was upscale, the kind of place where privacy was purchased along with healthcare. Dr. Chen's office occupied the entire 10th floor, and her receptionist greeted them with the kind of discretion that suggested she was well versed in treating patients who valued anonymity. Mrs. Romano, Dr. Chen said when she entered the exam room, extending her hand with a warm smile. She was 40-ish, Asian American, with kind eyes and an air of competence that immediately put Sofia at ease. It's lovely to meet you. Mr. Romano speaks very highly of you. He called you? Sofia shot Dante a look, to explain the situation and ensure I understood the unique circumstances of your case. Dr. Chen's tone remained professional, neutral. But I want to be clear, you're my patient, Mrs. Romano, not your husband. Whatever you tell me stays between us, unless you explicitly give me permission to share information. The relief that washed through Sofia was palpable. Thank you. That's important to me. I understand. Now, I've reviewed the medical records your previous doctor sent over. You're 14 weeks along. First pregnancy, no complications noted so far. How are you feeling? They went through the standard questions: morning sickness patterns, energy levels, any unusual symptoms. Sofia found herself relaxing as Dr. Chen worked, appreciating the woman's straightforward manner and obvious expertise. Everything looks good, Dr. Chen said after the examination and ultrasound. Baby is measuring perfectly. Heartbeat is strong at 158 beats per minute. All developmental markers are on track. She showed them the ultrasound screen, pointing out the tiny features that were just becoming visible. That's the head, there's the spine, and if you look closely, you can see the hand movements. Sofia's breath caught. The grainy image from 2 weeks ago had been miraculous, but this was different. This was real, a tiny person forming inside her, moving and growing and preparing to completely upend their lives. Can you tell the sex yet? Dante asked, his voice rougher than usual. Not definitively at this stage, but I can make an educated guess if you'd like. Or we can wait until the anatomy scan at 20 weeks for confirmation. Sofia and Dante exchanged a look. Wait, they said in unison, then laughed. After the appointment, they stopped for lunch at a small Italian place. Dante knew the kind of restaurant where the owner greeted him by name and immediately brought them to a private table in the back and away from windows and crowds. You do this a lot, Sofia observed as their food arrived. Find places where you can control the environment. It's habit. Dante speared a piece of pasta. When you grow up knowing people want to hurt you, you learn to minimize opportunities for them to succeed. Is that what this morning was about? The extra security? He set down his fork. You noticed. I notice a lot of things. Sofia kept her voice light, testing the waters. Like how Marco has been replaced by Alessandro in the kitchen. How there's always someone stationed outside our house. How you check every room before letting me enter. She paused. How you've been more tense than usual. Like you're waiting for something to happen. Dante leaned back in his chair, studying her with those dark eyes that missed nothing. Someone made a move against the Vitale family last week. Bombed one of their restaurants. 2 people died, including Matteo Vitale's pregnant sister. The blood drained from Sofia's face. Oh my God. It was meant to send a message about territory disputes, but all it did was spark a war. His expression was grim. The Vitali family is allied with ours, which means I need to respond. Need to show strength or risk looking weak. What does that mean? Respond? It means meetings this week that I can't avoid. Strategy sessions about how to handle the Calabrese family, who we're fairly certain were behind the bombing. It means violence is coming, Sofia. And I need you somewhere safe when it does. The threatening text message screamed in Sofia's mind. She should tell him. Should show him right now and let him connect the dots between the bombing, the territory war, and the threat against their baby. But looking at the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was already clenched in anticipation of the battles ahead, she couldn't add to his burden. Couldn't be one more thing he had to protect while trying to prevent all-out war. Where? She asked instead. Where do you want me to go? My family's compound upstate. It's secure, fully staffed, comfortable. Maria is already there with her kids. You'd have company. And it's only for a week, maybe 2, until we stabilize the situation. You want me to run away while you handle this. I want you and our baby safe while I do what needs to be done. His hand found hers across the table. Please, Amore, don't fight me on this. Not now. Sofia thought about the message. About the bomb that had killed a pregnant woman. About the very real possibility that she was a target in a war she didn't fully understand. Okay, she said quietly. I'll go, but on one condition. What? You call me every day. You tell me what's happening. You don't shut me out just because you think I can't handle the truth. She squeezed his hand. We're partners, Dante. That doesn't change just because things get dangerous. Relief and love flooded his expression. Every day. I promise. They finished lunch making. Plans when she'd leave tomorrow morning. What she'd bring. Rosa would help her pack. How long she'd stay as short as possible. Normal logistical discussions about abnormal circumstances. But as they walked back to the car, Sofia felt the weight of her secret growing heavier. The threatening text that connected her pregnancy to danger in ways Dante needed to know about. She'd tell him tonight, she decided. After they got home, after dinner, when she could show him the message and they could figure out together what it meant. Except when they arrived home, 3 of Dante's men were waiting in the living room with expressions that meant bad news. Boss, Antonio Greco said, standing when they entered. We have a problem. Dante's entire demeanor shifted, the gentle husband disappearing behind the mask of the man who controlled half of Chicago. What happened? The Calabrese family hit one of our gambling operations an hour ago. 4 men wounded, 2 critical. They left a message. Antonio held out a folder. They know about Mrs. Romano. The room went silent. Sofia felt every eye turned to her, felt the weight of what those words meant settling over everyone present. Dante took the folder, opened it, and his face went completely blank, the absolute stillness that meant volcanic rage barely contained. He pulled out a photograph, and Sofia caught a glimpse of it before he could hide it. It was her. Leaving the restaurant Saturday night, Dante's hand on her back, her profile clearly visible, and written across the bottom in red marker, pretty wife, pretty target, would be a shame if something happened. When was this taken? Dante's voice was deadly calm. Saturday. After the incident with the manager. Someone was watching the restaurant. Antonio's expression was grim. They've known about her for at least 3 days, boss. Maybe longer. Sofia's phone felt heavy in her pocket. The threatening text suddenly seemed less like a random threat and more like the first shot in a war she was already caught in the middle of. Get her packed, Dante said, not looking away from the photograph. She leaves tonight. Double the security detail. And Antonio. He finally lifted his gaze, and Sofia saw murder in his eyes. Find out who took this picture. Find out everyone who knew about it, and bring them to me. Dante. Sofia started, but he shook his head. Not now. We'll talk in the car. He turned to his men. I want this house swept for surveillance, all her usual locations checked, and a comprehensive security review of the compound upstate. If the Calabrese family thinks threatening my wife is a strategic move, they're about to learn exactly how strategic I can be. The men dispersed with military efficiency, leaving Sofia and Dante alone in the living room that suddenly felt more like a war room. I have something to tell you, Sofia said, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. I should have shown you this Sunday, but I didn't want to worry you, and I thought maybe it was nothing, but now. She pulled up the threatening text and handed him the phone. Dante read it, his jaw clenching tighter with each word. When he looked up at her, There was betrayal mixed with the rage. "When did you get this?" "Sunday morning, right before you brought me breakfast. And you didn't tell me. I didn't want to escalate things. Didn't want you to go to war over a text message that might have been someone's idea of a bad joke." "A bad joke." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "Sofia, someone threatened our baby and you thought it was a joke? I thought I could handle it. Thought maybe if I just ignored it, it would go away." Tears were streaming down her face now. "I didn't want to be the damsel who needed constant protection. Didn't want to be the reason for more violence. You're not the reason for violence. You're the reason I want to end it." Dante pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly despite his obvious anger. "But I can't protect you if you don't tell me when there are threats. I can't keep you safe if you're hiding information because you think you're being strong. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We'll discuss this later. Right now, we need to get you somewhere secure before the Calabrese family makes their next move." He pulled back, cupped her face. "And Sofia? No more secrets. No more protecting me from information I need. If something happens, if you feel unsafe, if someone so much as looks at you wrong, you tell me immediately. Understood?" She nodded, throat too tight to speak. "Okay." He kissed her forehead, gentle despite everything. "Let's get you packed. Tonight, you go to the compound. Tomorrow, I end this war before it really begins." As Rosa appeared to help with packing and Dante disappeared to make calls, Sofia stood in their bedroom and realized the bubble of normalcy had completely burst. No more pretending their life was anything close to safe or simple. From now on, everything was about survival. And survival in Dante Romano's world came with a price measured in blood. The Romano family compound sat on 40 acres of forested land 2 hours north of Chicago, hidden behind gates that looked decorative but could withstand a small army. Sofia had been here once before, for a family gathering shortly after her wedding, and remembered thinking it looked more like a luxury resort than a fortress. Now, arriving in darkness with 3 SUVs full of armed men, it looked exactly like what it was, a place built to weather wars. "Welcome back, Mrs. Romano." Elena, the compound's head of staff, greeted them at the entrance with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her worried eyes. "Your sister-in-law is waiting in the main house. We've prepared the east wing for you, more privacy, better sightlines, military terminology wrapped in hospitality." Maria Romano Giordano appeared in the doorway before Sofia could respond, her 8 months pregnant, belly making her waddle slightly as she rushed forward. "Sofia, thank God you're here," Dante called, "told me what happened. Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" "We're fine," Sofia said, accepting Maria's fierce hug. "Just scared. Good scared or bad scared? Because in this family, there's a difference." Maria pulled back, studying Sofia's face with the same intensity her brother possessed. "Good scared keeps you alert. Bad scared makes you freeze. I don't know which one I am yet." "Then let's get you inside and figure it out over tea. Or in my case, the decaf nonsense my doctor insists I drink." Maria linked her arm through Sofia's, guiding her into the sprawling main house. "The kids are asleep upstairs, but they'll be thrilled to see you tomorrow. Especially Luca, he's been asking when Uncle Dante's new wife would visit again." The interior was beautiful in the way of old money antique furniture mixed with modern comfort. Family photographs on every surface. The smell of something baking despite the late hour. It felt lived in, loved. Nothing like the cold fortress Sofia had been imagining. "Rosa sent cannoli," Elena said, appearing with a tray. "She said you've been craving them." Sofia's eyes stung. Rosa, who'd helped her pack while shooting worried looks, who'd pressed a rosary into her hands and made her promise to pray. Rosa, who'd worked for the Romano family for 30 years and knew exactly what it meant when wives got sent to the compound. "Thank you," Sofia managed, accepting the pastry. Dante appeared in the doorway, having finished securing the perimeter or whatever security protocols required before he could relax. "Maria, thanks for letting Sofia stay. She's family, Dante. Of course she's staying." Maria's expression turned stern. "But you and I need to talk, privately. Sofia, the guest room is ready whenever you want to lie down." "I'm not tired. Guest room. Now. Before I tell your husband exactly what I think about him dragging a pregnant woman into a mob war." Maria's voice held the particular authority of an older sister who'd been bossing Dante around since they were children. Sofia looked at Dante, who nodded slightly. "It's fine. Maria won't actually kill me. Probably. Debatable. Maria muttered, but she was already pulling Dante toward his father's old study, a room Sofia had only glimpsed once. All dark wood and cigar smoke and photographs of men who looked like they'd killed people. Elena showed Sofia to the guest room, actually a full suite with a sitting area, fireplace, and bathroom bigger than her first apartment. The bed was turned down, fresh flowers on the nightstand, and someone had already unpacked her toiletries. "If you need anything, just press the intercom," Elena said, pointing to a panel by the door. "There's always someone on duty. And Mrs. Romano Maria, she's a light sleeper. If you get anxious in the night," she said to come find her. After Elena left, Sofia sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself fall apart. The tears came hard and fast. Months of stress and fear and hormones and the crushing weight of today's revelations combining into sobs that shook her entire body. Someone had photographed her, had threatened her baby, had turned her pregnancy into ammunition in a war she didn't understand and hadn't chosen. And Dante was probably planning violence right now, planning how to hurt the people who'd threatened his family, calculating the most effective way to send a message written in blood and pain. She'd known what she was marrying, had gone in with open eyes, accepting that Dante Romano wasn't some reformed criminal but an active participant in organized crime. But knowing intellectually and living the reality were different countries, and Sofia was learning the language through immersion and trauma. A soft knock interrupted her crying. Maria entered without waiting for permission, carrying 2 mugs and wearing pajamas. Despite the early hour, "Thought you could use actual tea, not that herbal garbage." She settled onto the bed beside Sofia, handed her a mug. "It's half-calf. Won't hurt the baby, but might help your nerves." "I'm sorry," Sofia said, wiping her eyes. "This is such a mess. Honey, this is Tuesday in the Romano family. Wait until someone actually tries to kill you, then you can apologize for the mess." Maria sipped her own tea, eyeing Sofia with concern. "How far along are you?" 14 weeks, almost 15. "And my idiot brother just found out because some asshole manager at your restaurant outed you?" "How did you?" Dante called from the car. "Told me everything, including the part where you kept a threatening text message secret for 2 days." Maria's tone wasn't judgmental, just matter of fact. "Which was stupid, by the way, but I get it. You do? I've been married to Nico for 12 years. You think I don't understand the impulse to handle things yourself? To not want your husband going nuclear over every threat and insult?" Maria laughed softly. "When I was pregnant with Luca, someone from a rival family sent a letter saying they hoped my baby died. I hid it for a week before Nico found it. The explosion was memorable." "What happened?" "Nico made the problem disappear, very thoroughly. And then he sat me down and explained, very patiently, why keeping threats secret actually made me less safe, not more." Maria met Sofia's eyes. "Because when they don't have all the information, they can't protect effectively. They make assumptions, miss patterns, waste resources on the wrong threats. But if I tell Dante everything, he'll never let me breathe. He'll smother me with protection until I can't move without armed guards and security protocols." "Probably," Maria agreed. "For a while. Until the immediate danger passes, and he calms down enough to remember you're a person, not just a possession to guard." She squeezed Sofia's hand. "That's the dance. Sofia, you tell him the truth so he can protect you. He learns to trust your judgment so you don't suffocate. And somehow, you both figure out how to live in the space between safety and autonomy. How long did it take you?" "We're still figuring it out," Maria smiled. "But it gets easier. The first pregnancy is the worst. They're terrified of losing you, convinced every threat is catastrophic. By the 3rd kid, Nico barely flinched when someone spray-painted our house. Just had it repainted and moved on." Sofia laughed despite herself, then sobered. "What if I can't do this? What if I'm not strong enough for this life? You married Dante Romano knowing what he was. You kept your independence despite his overprotectiveness. You stood up to a manager who was twice your size and tried to assault you." Maria's voice turned fierce. "You're exactly strong enough. You just need to believe it." They talked for another hour about pregnancy and marriage and the particular complications of Kurd, loving men who solved problems with violence. Maria shared stories of her own early years with Nico, the mistakes and fights and slow learning curve of building a life in a world built on blood and loyalty. By the time Maria left, Sofia felt marginally better, less alone in her fear, more prepared for whatever came next. She was almost asleep when her phone buzzed. A text from Dante. Still in meetings. We'll be late. Sleep well, amor mio. I love you. She typed back. I love you too. Be safe. Then, because she needed to start being honest, I'm scared. His response came immediately. Me too. But we'll get through this. Together. Sofia held her phone against her chest and let herself believe it. Morning arrived with weak November sunlight and the sound of children's laughter filtering through the house. Sofia dressed in jeans and one of Dante's sweaters she'd started stealing them weeks ago, finding comfort in the scent and size, and ventured downstairs. The kitchen was chaos in the best way. Maria was making pancakes while her two older children, Luca and Isabella, set the table. A third child, maybe 3 years old, banged a spoon against a high-chair tray with enthusiastic rhythm. Aunt Sofia! Luca spotted her first, abandoning his task to run over. He was 7, all energy and dark Romano eyes. Mom said you're staying with us. Are you going to have a baby? Mom's having a baby. Can we play video games later? Luca, breathe. Maria laughed. Let Sofia have coffee first. Or tea in her case. I can handle video games, Sofia said, ruffling his hair. But I have to warn you, I'm terrible at them. That's okay. Uncle Dante is terrible too. He always dies first. The domesticity of it all felt surreal. Children and pancakes, and normal family breakfast while armed men patrolled outside, and her husband orchestrated war strategy 2 hours away in Chicago. Dante called this morning, Maria said once the kids were occupied, with food. He'll be up tonight, but only for a few hours. The situation is developing. The careful way she said it meant things were bad. Developing how? The Calabrese family made another move last night, hit one of our shipping operations. Nobody died, thank God, but the message was clear. Maria kept her voice low, mindful of little ears. They're trying to draw Dante into direct confrontation, force him to respond with overwhelming violence so they can claim he's the aggressor. And is he going to respond? He's Dante. Of course he's going to respond. Maria flipped a pancake with more force than necessary. The question is how measured that response will be. Whether he can stay strategic or if the threat against you pushed him past rational thinking. Sofia's stomach clenched. This is because of me. Because they know about the baby. This is because the Calabrese family are opportunistic bastards who saw a weakness and tried to exploit it. Maria turned to face her. Fully. Don't take this on yourself, Sofia. You didn't start this war. You're just caught in it. The day passed in strange limbo. Sofia helped with the kids, played video games with Luca. She was indeed terrible. And tried not to check her phone every 5 minutes for updates from Dante. He texted sporadically brief messages that said he was okay. Meetings were productive. Loved her. Nothing about what productive meetings meant in the context of mob warfare. Around 3, Antonio Greco arrived with 2 more security personnel. He found Sofia in the library, where she'd retreated to work on a paper for her final business class, though concentration felt impossible. Mrs. Romano, he said, settling into a chair across from her with the weariness of someone who hadn't slept in days. I wanted to brief you on the situation. Does Dante know you're doing this? He asked me to. Said you deserve to know what's happening, that hiding information only made things worse. Antonio pulled out a tablet, pulled up documents. The Calabrese family has been trying to expand into our territory for the past year. Nothing overt, just testing boundaries, seeing where we'd push back. The bombing last week was escalation, but the threat against you was strategic. Strategic how? They know Dante's reputation. Know he's more controlled than his father was, more willing to negotiate than fight. They're betting that threatening his family will make him emotional, make him lash out in ways that alienate our allies and justify their expansion. Antonio's expression was grim. They're trying to turn him into his father, make him the aggressor so they can claim self-defense. And the threat against me specifically creates a dilemma. If Dante doesn't respond, he looks weak. If he responds too hard, he looks unstable. They're hoping he chooses wrong. Antonio leaned forward. But here's what they didn't count on you. Sofia blinked. Me? They assumed you were like most mob. Wives. Window dressing. Someone to threaten but not account for strategically. His smile was slight but genuine. They don't know you kept working despite being married to one of the most powerful men in Chicago. That you stood up to your manager. That you're finishing a business degree while pregnant and managing the stress of this life. They underestimated you, Mrs. Romano. That's their mistake. I don't see how any of that helps. Because it means you can be part of the solution instead of just the problem. Antonio pulled up more documents, financial records, business holdings, complex networks of shell companies. The Calabrese family's power comes from their legitimate business holdings. Restaurants, real estate, import companies. They've built enough legal cover that direct action against them looks like aggression rather than justice. So what's the alternative? We dismantle their financial infrastructure. Quietly, legally, using the same business tactics they've used to expand. He showed her spreadsheets, patterns of financial irregularities. This is what you're good at, isn't it? Financial analysis? Business strategy? Sofia stared at the documents, her training automatically cataloging the patterns she saw. Money laundering through restaurant receipts, real estate purchases that violated zoning laws, import companies with shipments that didn't match declared values. You want me to build a case against them. I want you to find their weaknesses so we can exploit them without firing a single shot. Antonio's voice was serious, respectful. Dante wants to protect you, I get that. But maybe the best protection is giving you agency. Letting you fight back using your skills instead of just hiding while the men handle everything. It was exactly what Sofia had been craving, a way to be useful instead of vulnerable. To contribute instead of just being protected. Does Dante know about this? It was his idea, though he asked me to present it. Carefully, said you might think he was putting you in danger. Antonio smiled slightly. Are you interested? Yes. The word came without hesitation. Show me everything. They worked through the afternoon, Antonio walking Sofia through the Calabrese family's financial structure while she took notes, asked questions, and started seeing patterns that even Antonio had missed. Her business degree was finally useful for something beyond theoretical case studies. Here, she said, pointing to a series of transactions. These restaurant purchases all happened within 3 weeks of each other, but they're listed as separate companies. That's structuring intentionally, breaking up large transactions to avoid reporting requirements. Can we prove it? If I can access their full financial records, yes. But that would require. She trailed off, realizing what she was suggesting. That would require illegal access to private business documents, which we can obtain through various means. Antonio's tone was carefully neutral. The question is whether you're comfortable being part of that process. Sofia thought about the threatening text, about the photograph of her leaving the restaurant, about the bomb that had killed a pregnant woman and her unborn baby. I'm comfortable, she said finally. Show me what you need. Dante arrived just after dinner, looking exhausted and wound tight with the particular tension Sofia had learned, meant violence barely restrained. He went straight to her, pulled her into his arms without words, just holding her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. How are you? He asked against her hair. I'm okay. Working, actually. Antonio showed me. I know. He texted updates. Dante pulled back enough to see her face. You don't have to do this, Sofia. If it's too much, if you'd rather just stay here where it's safe, I'd rather be useful. She touched his face, feeling the stubble that meant he hadn't taken time to shave, the tension in his jaw. I'm going crazy just sitting here waiting. Let me help. Let me use my skills for something that matters. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but if at any point it becomes too stressful, if the baby... I'll tell you, I promise. No more secrets. They had dinner with Maria's family, surprisingly normal despite the circumstances. The kids demanded Dante's attention, climbing on him and sharing stories about their day with the particular fearlessness of children who'd never seen their uncle as anything but safe. After the kids were in bed, the adults gathered in the study: Dante, Maria, Nico, who'd arrived that afternoon, Antonio, and Sofia. Maps were spread across the desk, documents stacked in careful piles. The Calabrese family is meeting tomorrow night, Nico said without preamble. He was shorter than Dante, stockier, with the kind of face that looked friendly until you noticed the cold calculation in his eyes. All their leadership, planning their next move. We have someone inside who can get us the location. And then what? Maria asked. You storm in with guns blazing and start a war that kills dozens of people? We contain the situation. Dante's voice was controlled, measured. Remove their leadership in a way that looks like internal conflict. Their organization fractures, their territory becomes available, and we absorb it without appearing aggressive. That's murder, Sofia said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Dante's expression was carefully blank. Yes, it is. Is there another way? Something that doesn't involve killing people? Not if we want this ended quickly and decisively. Dante moved to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. Sofia, I know this isn't what you want to hear. I know you married me hoping the violence was exaggerated or historical or something I'd move past. But this is who I am. This is what I do to keep my family safe. I know. Her voice shook, slightly. I need to understand where the line is. What you're willing to do, what you're not. Because our baby is going to grow up learning from you, Dante. Learning what's acceptable, what's justified. And I need to know if I can live with teaching those lessons. The room went silent. Maria and Nico exchanged a glance. Antonio suddenly found the maps very interesting. Come with me, Dante said finally, pulling Sofia toward the door. We need to talk. Privately. He led her to one of the compound's sitting rooms, closed the door, and then just stood there for a moment, staring out the window at the dark forest beyond. My father killed 47 people that we know of, he said finally. Probably more that were never connected to him. He believed violence was currency. The more brutal you were, the more respect you commanded. And he was right, in a way. People were terrified of him, did exactly what he wanted out of fear. Dante turned to face her. But fear doesn't build loyalty. It builds resentment, waiting for weakness. My father died when someone he'd terrorized for years finally saw an opportunity and took it. His expression was haunted. I was there, watched him bleed out on the floor of his own home because he'd made so many enemies that even his guards couldn't be trusted. Sofia moved to him, took his hands. You're not your father. I'm not. But I'm also not some reformed criminal who can just walk away from this life. The Romano family has obligations, territories, business interests that require enforcement. Sometimes that enforcement is financial or political. Sometimes it's violence. He squeezed her hands. The Calabrese family threatened you. Threatened our baby. If I don't respond, every enemy I have will see that as weakness. Will know that attacking my family is viable strategy. So you have to kill them. I have to neutralize them. And yes, that probably means some of their leadership dies. His voice was steady, unflinching. I'm not asking you to approve. I'm not asking permission. But I am asking if you can live with being married to someone who makes those choices. Sofia thought about the threatening text. About the photograph. About what Antonio had shown her evidence of the Calabrese family's own violence. Their drug operations that killed addicts. Their protection rackets that destroyed small businesses. Their trafficking operations that victimized women and children. Can you do it without becoming him? She asked finally. Without turning into someone who uses violence as first response instead of last resort? I can try. I am trying. Dante touched her face gently. That's why I asked Antonio to involve you in the financial investigation. Why I wanted to give you agency, instead of just locking you away. Because you make me better, Sofia. You remind me there are lines worth maintaining, humanity worth preserving. Then I need something from you. Anything. Before you make the bread. A final decision about tomorrow night. Let me show you what I found in their financial records. Give me a chance to build a case that destroys them legally before you destroy them literally. She held his gaze. If the legal route doesn't work, if there's no way to neutralize them without violence, then I'll accept that. But let me try first. Dante was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 24 hours. Show me what you have, and if it's enough, we'll do it your way. And if it's not enough, then I do what needs to be done to keep you safe. His voice was absolute, final. And you'll have to decide if you can love me anyway. Sofia worked through the night, fueled by tea and determination and the particular clarity that came from pregnancy hormones and existential stakes. Antonio brought her files. Some obtained legally, others definitely not, and she built a case with the same precision she'd applied to class projects. Except, now the grade was measured in lives instead of letters. By dawn, she had it. Here, she showed Dante and Antonio the laptop screen, pointing to the web of connections she'd mapped. The Calabrese family has been laundering money through a real estate development company. 43 properties purchased with cash, all within 6 months, none of them generating legitimate income. That's textbook money laundering. We suspected that already, Antonio said. Yes, but look at the other investors in those properties. Sofia pulled up more documents. 3 city council members, a federal judge, and 2 state senators. They're all receiving passive income from these developments, income that's clearly laundered drug money. Dante leaned forward, studying the connections. If we expose this, the politicians lose their careers, the judge gets disbarred, and the Calabrese family loses their political protection. Sofia clicked through more files. Without that protection, their other operations fall apart. The health inspector they've been bribing suddenly does actual inspections. The detective who's been looking the other way on their drug operations suddenly has incentive to build a case. Their entire infrastructure collapses. How long would that take? Dante asked. To expose it? I can have this compiled and sent to the right journalists within an hour. To actually see results? Sofia glanced at Antonio. How long does it take to build a federal case? Months. Maybe a year. Antonio's voice was thoughtful. But the exposure alone would force the Calabrese family to redirect resources to legal defense. Would make them vulnerable to being absorbed by other families. So it doesn't solve the immediate problem, Dante said. They'd still be operational, still a threat, still capable of threatening me, Sofia interrupted. I know. But Dante, if you kill their leadership, you start a war. If you destroy them legally, you establish that attacking your family has consequences beyond violence. You show every other potential enemy that you can dismantle them without firing a shot. She stood, moved to face him directly. That's power. Real power. Not the kind your father had, built on fear and brutality. The kind you've been trying to build based on strategy and intelligence and being smarter than your enemies. Dante looked at the laptop, then at Sofia, then at Antonio. Your assessment? Mrs. Romano's plan has merit, Antonio said carefully. It's slower, less immediately satisfying, but potentially more effective long-term. And it establishes a new pattern for how the Romano family handles threats. What about the immediate danger? They're still planning something for tomorrow night. We have options. We could hit their drug operations instead of their leadership, seize product, disrupt cash flow. Combined with the legal exposure, that's enough damage to force them into defensive posture without triggering full-scale war. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his hand unconsciously moving to rest on Sofia's still flat stomach. If I do this, if I try it your way and it doesn't work, if they come after you anyway, then you do what you have to do, Sofia said. And I'll know you tried every other option first. He pulled her into his arms, held her tightly. You're either the smartest person I've ever met or the most naive. I haven't decided which. Can't I be both? That earned a surprised laugh. Yeah, amore, you can be both. The next 72 hours moved with surgical precision. Sofia compiled her evidence and sent it to 3 different journalists, all of whom worked for outlets known for investigative reporting on political corruption. Antonio coordinated raids on 4 Calabrese drug operations, seizing over $2 million in product and cash. And Dante made calls, quiet conversations with allies and neutral parties that shifted the balance of power without a single shot fired. The first article dropped Wednesday morning. Chicago politicians caught in money laundering scheme. By Wednesday evening, 2 city council members had resigned. By Thursday, the FBI had announced a formal investigation. The Calabrese family's response was panicked and poorly coordinated. They tried to call in favors from politicians who were now toxic, attempted to intimidate witnesses who were already cooperating with federal investigators, and generally behaved exactly like criminals who'd suddenly lost their protection. They're finished, Antonio reported Friday morning. Not dead, but mortally wounded. Without their political connections and with their cash flow disrupted, they don't have resources for sustained conflict. They're retreating, consolidating, trying to survive. Dante had returned to the compound Thursday night, exhausted but carrying less tension than he'd had all week. Now he sat across from Sofia at breakfast, studying her over his coffee. You did it, he said finally. You actually did it. We did it. Your people executed everything, Antonio coordinated. You found the weakness, provided the strategy. He reached across the table for her hand. I've been running this family for 5 years, and I never thought to weaponize legal exposure the way you did. Sofia, that's brilliant. It's just business analysis applied to a different problem. It's more than that. It's proof that there's another way. That we can protect our interests without perpetuating the cycle of violence that's defined this life for generations. Sofia felt something release in her chest tension she'd been carrying since that first threatening text. So what happens now? Now we wait for the legal process to play out. Stay here for another week or two until we're certain the immediate danger has passed. Then we go home." He smiled slightly. "And figure out how to raise a baby in a world that's marginally less violent than it was a month ago. And the Calabrese family will eventually collapse under the weight of their legal problems. Other families will absorb their territory through negotiation rather than war. And everyone will remember that attacking the Romano family leads to destruction, just not the kind they expected." Maria appeared in the doorway, her own coffee in hand. "I just got off the phone with Nico. The word on the street is that you're a genius, Sofia. People are saying Dante Romano found a wife who's more dangerous than he is." "I'm not dangerous," Sofia protested. "You dismantled an entire criminal organization using financial records and journalism. That's terrifying." Maria grinned. "I love it. About time someone in this family used their brain instead of their guns." "Don't get too excited," Dante said dryly. "We still have guns. We're just more selective about using them now." The weekend passed in relative peace. Sofia worked on her final papers for school graduation was in 3 weeks, and she'd be damned if an organized crime prevented her from finishing her degree. The kids ran wild through the compound, blissfully unaware of the drama their presence helped normalize. And slowly, carefully, Sofia felt herself starting to breathe again. Sunday evening, she was reading on the couch when Dante appeared with a small box. "I have something for you," he said, settling beside her. Sofia opened the box to find a pendant, a small golden compass on a delicate chain. "It's beautiful. It's not just beautiful. It's symbolic." He took the necklace, fastened it around her neck. "You helped me find a new direction this week. Showed me there's a path between my father's brutality and weakness. This is to remind you that you're my compass, Sofia. The thing that keeps me oriented toward being better." Tears pricked her eyes. "That's a lot of pressure to put on a necklace. Good thing you're strong enough to carry it." They sat in comfortable silence, his hand resting on her stomach, where their baby grew. Outside, security made their rounds. In the kitchen, someone was cooking dinner. Upstairs, children's laughter echoed. Normal life, or as close to it as they could manage. "I want to tell you something," Sofia said after a while. "About why I kept that threatening text secret. You don't have to. I want to." She turned to face him fully. "I kept it secret because I was scared. Not of the threat itself, but of what you'd become if I told you. I was scared you'd turn into your father, all rage and violence and no restraint. That protecting me would mean losing yourself." Dante's expression was complex hurt and understanding mixed together. "And now? Now I know that was unfair. I was projecting my fear onto you instead of trusting that you'd choose wisely. That you're capable of being strategic even when your family is threatened." She touched the compass pendant. "I'm sorry for not believing in you. And I'm sorry for not showing you sooner that there were options beyond violence, for letting you think that's all I was capable of." He pulled her closer. "We're learning, Amor, both of us, how to be partners in this impossible life. Think we'll ever figure it out. I think we'll spend our entire marriage trying. And that's okay." He kissed her forehead gently. "Perfection is overrated anyway." Monday morning brought news that the federal investigation had expanded to include RICO charges. Tuesday, 3 more Calabrese associates were arrested. By Wednesday, their entire organization was in free-fall arrests, asset seizures, cooperating witnesses all combining to ensure they'd never recover. "It's safe to go home," Antonio reported Wednesday afternoon. "The threat level has dropped to baseline. The Calabrese family is too busy with legal defense to think about retaliation." Sofia had mixed feelings about leaving the compound. It had been a shelter, yes, but also a prison of sorts. Going home meant returning to reality, to finishing school and figuring out what her life looked like now that everyone knew she was Sofia Romano, not just Sofia Castellano. "What are you thinking?" Dante asked as they packed Thursday morning. "That everything's changed. My job, my anonymity, my sense of safety. I can't go back to Carmelo's now, not after everything. And I'm not sure who I am if I'm not waitressing and studying and pretending to be normal." "You're a brilliant strategist who just dismantled a criminal organization," Dante said. "You're my wife. You're the mother of my child. And you're about to graduate with a business degree that you can use however you want, consulting, starting your own firm, joining my legitimate business operations." "Your legitimate operations." "I own 17 restaurants, Sofia. All completely legal, all needing the kind of financial oversight and strategic planning you're good at. He smiled slightly. Unless you'd rather I hire some stranger who doesn't understand how this world works. The offer was tempting, meaningful work that used her skills without requiring her to pretend she wasn't married to who she was married to. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. The offer stands whenever you're ready. They said goodbye to Maria and the kids, promised to visit soon, and made the drive back to Chicago in comfortable silence. The city looked different somehow when they arrived, more vibrant, more alive, like Sofia was seeing it with new eyes. Their house felt different too. Not just the place they lived, but actually home in ways it hadn't before. Evidence of their life together scattered through every room. Sofia's textbooks on the coffee table, Dante's jacket draped over a chair, the ultrasound photo magnetized to the refrigerator. "Welcome home, Mrs. Romano," Rosa said when they entered, pulling Sofia into a fierce hug. "Thank God you're safe. I was so worried. I'm fine." "We're fine." Sofia hugged back, breathing in Rosa's familiar scent of garlic and lavender. "Thank you for taking care of things while we were gone." That evening, Sofia stood in what would become the nursery, imagining how they'd transform this space. Where the crib would go, what color to paint the walls, whether they wanted traditional or modern furniture. Thinking about design schemes? Dante asked from the doorway. Thinking about the future, about raising a baby who'll grow up knowing their father has power and influence, but hopefully also knowing he tried to use that power responsibly. No pressure. All the pressure. Sofia smiled at him. "But I think you can handle it." He moved to stand behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, hands spreading across where their baby grew. "We'll mess it up sometimes. Make mistakes, teach the wrong lessons, fail in ways we can't predict. Probably, but we'll try. Every day, we'll try to be better than we were. To build something worth inheriting." His voice was quiet, serious. "That's all I can promise, Sofia. That I'll try. That's all I need." She turned in his arms, kissed him softly. "We'll figure out the rest as we go." Outside, Chicago hummed with its endless energy. Inside, two people who'd found each other despite impossible odds stood in an empty room and imagined a future. Not perfect, not simple, but theirs, and that was enough. 3 months later, Sofia Romano graduated summa cum laude from DePaul University on a cold February morning. Dante sat in the front row with Maria and her family, watching as his wife crossed the stage to accept her diploma with one hand while the other rested on her now obvious baby bump. The threatening text message had been traced back to a low-level Calabrese associate, trying to make a name for himself. He was currently serving 5 years for making terroristic threats, and the Calabrese family itself had been formally dissolved, their remaining members absorbed into other organizations or imprisoned. Sofia had started consulting work for 3 of Dante's restaurants, implementing financial controls and strategic planning that had already increased profitability by 15%. She was building a reputation separate from her husband, not just the mob boss's wife, but a legitimate business consultant who happened to be married to power. "I'm so proud of you," Dante said after the ceremony, pulling her into his arms despite the crowd. 4 years of school, finishing while pregnant and dealing with mob drama. "You're incredible." "We're incredible," Sofia corrected. "I couldn't have done this without your support." Even when that support came with excessive security and overprotectiveness. Speaking of which, he pulled an envelope from his jacket. Graduation present. Inside was a deed to a small office building in Lincoln Park, perfectly positioned for a consulting firm. "Dante, this is too much. It's an investment in my wife's business. Tax deductible even." His smile was teasing, but his eyes were serious. "You earned this, Sofia. Your degree, your success, all of it. This is just me helping you take the next step." She kissed him there in the crowd, not caring who saw, not caring about anything except this moment with this man who'd somehow become both her greatest danger and her safest place. Their baby kicked, strong and insistent, reminding them both that the future was already arriving. "Ready to go home?" Dante asked. "Ready to build what comes next." They walked out of the university together, husband and wife, partners in crime and legitimacy, 2 people learning to love each other through impossible circumstances. Behind them, Chicago glittered with possibility. Ahead, their baby waited to be born into a world that was marginally safer, because her mother had refused to accept that violence was the only answer. And in that moment, walking hand in hand into their complicated future, Sofia knew she'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice, not the easy choice, but the right one. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next.